Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another edition of Added Time, answering your questions that you kindly submitted for today's video. But before we get into any of that, I want to ask you guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and a notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also hit a like button if you're enjoying the content because it helps out the channel as well. But let's get into your questions on this Monday, on this transfer deadline day. Firstly here from Abinash, who asks, do you really think that we can see Pulisic as winger and striker as Werner in the next game? Of course, that is against Southampton at home in the league. Of course, we've got the international break now. A little bit frustrating after the Crystal Palace victory, but on your question, I do. I think that the luxury now, hopefully, if all the players go off on international duty, don't get injured, have some good time playing on the pitch, and then get back fully fit, Frank Lampard will finally have the luxury of more options in attacking areas that he hasn't had so far this season. He will finally have more wingers to choose from, whether that be Christian Pulisic, hopefully Hakim Ziyech, and also Callum Hudson-Odoi, who is staying now at Chelsea Football Club, which is great news. But on all those cases, I do think Christian Pulisic will be starting a game very soon. It's an interesting question, isn't it? Because as other questions I'm going to answer in today's video, you want that consistency now in that starting 11, and I think Frank Lampard, as any coach, would want that consistency, being able now to see a starting 11. Like, you can sort of know in each position what the best player is, and I think that's going to be difficult. We're still going to have to figure that out in the coming weeks and games, but I definitely would like to see Pulisic now starting games, because I do think Pulisic is a game changer for Chelsea. He truly is. And if Lampard wants to find the most threatening team, I think Pulisic will be starting on the left. So yeah, I definitely think we could see that, and I think that could help Timo Werner get his first Premier League goal. John Pearson asks, is Van Ginkel still with us? Yes, he is. I checked this before coming on to record this video. He is. He has not been loaned out yet by Chelsea. I expected him to be. I wonder if it's a case of fitness problems. I mean, he's been out for so long with injury, barely played any football over the past year. And I remember getting a question about Van Ginkel and Charlie Masunda weeks back, sort of asking if either of those had a Chelsea career, if either of those could break into the team and get any minutes under Lampard. And I just can't see it at the moment. I think it's difficult for Chelsea. You look at the players Chelsea are trying to sell at the moment who are fit, who have played football recently, and they're finding it difficult to shift them. With Van Ginkel, who's barely played any football in the current market, a team's not going to come in for him pretty simply. So it's difficult. I think Van Ginkel may need to get some football maybe in the development squad if he can get that, maybe this year in some cases, to get some sort of fitness back up. But in terms of actually loaning him out, I think it's going to be difficult, but I cannot see him ever getting into the first team again, in my opinion. Prefresh97 asks, with signing of Rice looking unlikely, should Lamps turn to a 4-3-3 to give more solidity, or stay with a 4-2-3-1 to get the best out of Kai? At the moment, it seems like Lampard is going with the 4-2-3-1, and I think that's a good idea, because if you can get Kai Havertz as sort of the focal point of the creativity of Chelsea's team in that number 10 position, as we're starting to see more and more, I think, even though, of course, he didn't have a massive influence on Saturday's game, there were certain moments in that game where you saw Kai really come to the fore in terms of influencing the creativity of Chelsea. And you think, against a team unlike Crystal Palace, who will give Kai more space, he can really influence play for Chelsea. I don't mind the 4-2-3-1. If Frank wants to commit to that formation, good, let's stick to it. I don't want to see shifting to 3 at the back next time. I think Frank should be sticking at least to the 4-2-3-1 for the next game, seeing as it worked against Crystal Palace. But yeah, I understand that solidity. It's a massive concern, isn't it? Because overcommitting, being sort of unbalanced in that midfield and being done on transition, it's still got to be a concern for Chelsea, even though we weren't done by it on Saturday. We had a very good balanced game on Saturday, but I'd like to see that 4-2-3-1 used again. I also think it's going to be interesting to see the dynamic, as I said in one of the answers before, when Pulisic, Ziyech, Hudson-Odoi, all these players are available, what is the best sort of three behind the striker that Frank can pick to make us the most threatening team in attack? TY7 asks, should the regular back four be Chilwell, Zuma, Thiago and Aspi? The defence seems to be more solid with Aspi, whilst Reece does get caught out a lot. I think Dave and Reece, I always felt that was going to be a tussle this season. I did. I said that before the season started. I felt that over the course of this season, Reece will be the main right back. I think he'll play more. But Dave showing once again in the past couple of games why his experience is so vital to this team, and it's something that Reece has to work on in his game. I think he has got the mobility to be good defensively and not get caught out. It's not a Marcus Alonso situation with Reece James. I wonder if it's Frank Lampard's instructions, really pushing his fullbacks up that high, but also the game intelligence and awareness of Reece James. Dave is probably, if you're talking about positionally, defensively for Chelsea, probably still our best defender in terms of someone you can rely on to be in the right place at the right time. All that experience and now over a number of years for Chelsea. He's been so incredible for Chelsea. He really has. And once again, as you saw on Saturday, as you saw in the Tottenham game, he can still be a valuable member of this squad. And whilst Frank is still finding his best 11, don't be stunned to see Dave in the starting 11, because he's still a trusted player in this squad as well as the captain too. So I think at the moment, I'd like to see in the next game, I'd like to see that back four stay unless there's any major injuries. I'd like to see that back four be the same. And it's on Reece James when he does get the opportunity to prove to Lampard he should be in the starting 11 once again. Ike asks, what do you think about the incident between Tammy and Jorginho? Shouldn't he have left Tammy to get on the score sheet? Also, don't you think this might create problems in the dressing room for the players? So I talked about this in my rational perspective on Saturday, and I really don't think it's that big an issue. I think you could blow this out of proportion. I understand Tammy's competitive edge, his desire and desperation to get on the score sheet. The game's wrapped up at that point. It's 3-0. There's barely any time to go. But Jorginho is the senior penalty taker, so I understood that situation, right? And I understand a striker's desperation to score goals. I don't think that's an issue. I actually think in some ways that's a positive sign for Tammy to want to get that goal, to want to score goals as a striker. That's his main aim, right? But I like the fact that Dave was very swift in his leadership to pull Tammy away from that situation. Listen to Frank Lampard post-game. He was very swift in his comments saying it's been dealt with. And there's nothing wrong with a competitive edge. I'm sure in training all the time you get spats. You see this with most teams. These are competitive beings. These are motivated individuals. And I don't think there's a problem. Like I see sometimes people have a go at Chelsea or have a go at football teams now and football players for not having maybe the passion that you'd want in a team. That's the passion right there. And I don't think that's a problem. The only issue is if Tammy was to use that incident as an excuse to not perform well. But to me, for the rest of the game, he was still tracking back in the 94th minute. I don't think it's a problem. I really don't think it's an issue. And I think, if anything, it shows you that there's players' desire there to get on the score sheet to score more goals. So I think problem sorted. It's the end of it and we move on. Dogload asks, what do you think of Werner's current form? I know he's barely played in the centre-forward position, but even as a winger, a player of his calibre and price should at least get a goal, especially considering the teams we faced. I'm starting to worry about the Chelsea striker curse a little, not going to lie. I don't think there should be that massive a concern. I spoke about this in a question I answered earlier about Christian Pulisic. Finally, we have more wingers available. So finally, Frank Lampard could play Timo Werner through the middle. I think he's looked best there so far. I think the only game he's actually played starting a game through the middle is against Brighton. And I thought he looked really dangerous on that night. I don't think Chelsea were as fluid that night. And I'd like to see Werner through the middle again, but this time with Chelsea having a little bit more confidence and fluidity and control in our play. And I think he could do wonders, really. I mean, I think the link-up you saw in that Brighton pre-season friendly with Ziyech putting the ball in for Timo Werner, you want to see that this season. I think that could be a massive threat. Ziyech still hasn't played for Chelsea in the Premier League at all this season. So there's that as well. I think, I wrote a piece before the season started and I mentioned it on the channel that I did think Werner, sort of the mould of the striker Werner is in. I think he has to sort of break the mould of Chelsea strikers to succeed. I mean, you look at the strikers that have succeeded at Chelsea, Diego Costa, Didier Drogba, Olivier Giroud. I'm talking about the last 15 years. All more physical, bulkier strikers, right, for the type of league it is. It just the DNA of Chelsea recently, those strikers succeed. It's on Timo to sort of change that. And I don't think you should be concerned. I think Timo, when he's got the ball, when he's got into space, he's looked impressive to me. He's looked sharp. He doesn't look like a player lacking confidence. I think it's just about now getting that team. We haven't had a pre-season, right? And in pre-season, a lot of these issues and teaming problems for new players could have been fixed in pre-season games. I mean, in a pre-season where you play 5 to 6 games, Werner could have started on the left and then shifted to a middle position. You could have got that chemistry. That's going to take a little bit longer this season, as we've seen already. But I think once Werner gets into that central position, once Chelsea have all the players fit, I think he'll score a lot of goals. I truly do, because I think he's a quality striker. Roy asks, have you seen that our set-piece defending has been improved after Barry's appointment? That man deserves more recognition from our fan base. Of course, Anthony Barry joining Chelsea's coaching staff this season. A lot has been made of it. I don't want to make too much of it because I'm not a Cobham. I don't know what Barry does compared to other coaches. I don't know if he's a set-piece specialist. I think a lot of people jumped on that. Unless you're at Cobham, you don't know what goes on. And I also think if you're going to give Barry credit, I think you have to give nearly all the coaching staff credit, right? If there's an improvement in this season, I think you need to give credit to Frank Lampard. So I don't want to jump too heavily on that, to be honest. But I do think, although of course we have seen worrying defensive signs already this season, most of those have been individual mistakes rather than collectively us falling asleep. I think, even the West Brom game, the set piece goal against them, at the end of the day, Marcos Alonso isn't tracking his runner, right? And I think if he tracks his runner, Chelsea clear that ball very easily. But on set piece, I think especially Saturday, we looked a lot more collectively solid. Palace didn't offer a lot going forward, but at times they did. And those are those moments in those games that can really change the momentum of a game. And Palace, you sort of think averages, those are the moments that they really want to capitalise on to get a goal. And I thought Chelsea looked solid, never looked uncertain. Maybe Mendy's inclusion. I think having a goalkeeper that defence trust is going to be absolutely massive for Chelsea, because we haven't had it for so long. And I thought all round the defence looked very solid, looked assertive, didn't make individual mistakes, and collectively looked as a unit. And Ben Chilwell said as much in his press conference last week. He said that they've been working on it a lot at Cobham, so hopefully that continues in the coming weeks, because if it does, Chelsea will improve this season, no doubt. But that is it for this edition of Added Time. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch it. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and a notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter @SonofChelsea. Have a great day, and I'll see you again.